Hello and welcome back. Um, this kind of episode is going to span over two parts, just because we kind of ran out of time on the first part. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making this nice timer up here, and this timer is going to count down from any value you like, but we've set it to 60. And it's going to change this label over here so that we can see it, and when it finishes, it's gonna spin us round and round and for about 8 seconds, and the spin will get faster and faster as it goes, and eventually it will tell us looped and then reset the entire game. So I think let's just have a look at how it looks. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. So you'll see it starts spinning us once it reaches the bottom. Timer goes haywire. That's a desired effect, don't worry. And once it spins for a while, it says looped, and the level resets. So in part 1 of this episode, we are going to be making the base mechanic for the countdown timer, just to get it to count down from our desired number and stop when it reaches 0. Then in part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to get this label set up so that the player can actually see what time he's on, what time they're on, and we're going to write the code to spin the level once the timer reaches 0. So whether you're on part 1 or whether you're watching part 2, let's get straight in, or let's continue. Right, so we're just going to pick up straight from where we left off in part 1, and if I open up the checklist, we can see that we've finished the countdown timer, the basis for it now, and the next step is to display this timer so that the player can actually see the time, because currently what we're doing is I don't know why that happened. One sec. There we go, sorry about that. Currently what we're doing is we are just looking at the value of the variable, but the player won't be able to see this variable. So what we got to do is we got to get some kind of text up here that's going to display what the timer is actually like. And if we head over to the demo game, we can see that that's this kind of red 60 up here, and that's going to count down like that. So let's start off by creating that text kind of object, and to do any kind of UI in Unity, what we need is a canvas. So I'm going to close off all those tabs there like that, and now I'm going to create another game object to keep this organized, and I'm going to call this UIs, like that. Then in the UIs object, I'm going to right click and create a canvas, and that's in the drop down UI canvas. Now I'm going to name this canvas main UI canvas. Okay. So what this is going to be is this is going to contain the timer, the objective label, the tool label, and the pause button. So what we first need to do is, you can see when we if I hide this, you'll see that our game is just contained over here. This white box is the camera. These are all our environment stuff. If we unhide this, you can see we have another white box starting here. And if we zoom out a lot, we can see that we have a canvas in our scene. So now we've got to put elements onto this canvas so we can actually see them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a text object on this canvas. So to do that, I'm going to click on main UI canvas, right click on it, go to UI, and I'm going to select text. Give it a second, just buffering through. Just taking some time for some reason. One sec. Don't know why it's taking time. Okay, so I seem to have some kind of editor bug. The first thing I'm gonna do to try and fix this is I'm just gonna save it here. I'm gonna delete this first of all. I'm gonna save my project, and I'm gonna try restarting it to see if that helps anything. Yeah, don't know why that came, doesn't usually happen. I'm just going to open up Unity Hub again and open the project. I'll pause the video so you don't have to watch Unity reopening. Okay, so Unity opened back up, and I'm going to try that again. If not, I'm going to do a search and see if what that bug is. But yeah, it worked. So I guess that was just a quick fix of just closing the editor and reopening it. Sometimes stuff like that just does happen, so your first port of call is to reset the application, see if there was just something went wrong with the Unity editor. Right, so anyway, let me go back to where we were. If I delete this, we have the main UI canvas. What we're going to do is right click on it, go to UI, and create a text object. And you should see now in the center of our canvas we have a little text box, and inside it says new text. Now if we select this text item, we can see that we've got it in the inspector window just like everything else. So we can see all the components on it, including a rect transform, canvas renderer, and the text object. So first of all, what I'm going to do is on this kind of image here, I'm going to click it, and this is where the anchors go. And an anchor is, if you can see here, we've got this kind of white cross thing here just behind the blue circle, and this is basically telling Unity, depending on the window size, where does the text need to be. So currently where it is, it'll always try and put this text in the center of the player's screen, but as we can see here, that's not what we want. We want it to be up at the top. So to do that, we're going to go over here and select this, and we want this this anchor here, which is to the top of the screen. Now you can see here it says Shift also set pivot and Alt also set pivot. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt so that when I click this, it's going to auto realign it like that. And that's almost how I want it. The one thing I do want to do, however, is I'm just going to go over to the Y position and bring it down a little, just so it looks a bit nicer, and I think that looks fine. The next step I'm going to do is in this text component. First of all, I'm going to set the alignment to be in center, both horizontally and vertically, and then I'm just going to put in a dummy number here, which is 60, just as the timer would start. Then over here where it says font style, I'm going to select bold and italic. Next, I'm just going to drag this font size icon so that the font of the text will be bigger. But before I do that, I'm just going to drag to make the box bigger itself. And then I think that looks like a decent size. If you at any time want to check this, you can always head into the game window and then see how it's looking in your game. And I think for now maybe we should just move it up a bit. So I'm going to go back up to the Y position, and actually I'm going to do it in the game view, and I'm just going to move it to around there. That looks fine. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to change this color here, and I'm going to change the color to red. One more thing actually that I forgot is we should check best fit here. So this will auto resize the timer based on the constraints of the box. And so what I actually want to do first is I want to take this box size down a bit and make sure it's aligned properly, and that looks fine to me. The next thing I want to do is I want to add some kind of shadow to this. So if you can see here, it's there, but if we were to go over something red, then it's not gonna it's not gonna stand out as much. So what I'm gonna do is add a shadow component, and to do that I need to go into add component. I'm just gonna type in here shadow, and you should see this component come up, and when you select it, you should see there is a very small shadow. Now to increase this, I'm just going to turn the effect distance to about 3 on the X and the Y, or just on the X will be fine, 1 on the Y. So you can't see it now because the background's black, but I think that looks fine from judging from this viewpoint. Yeah, that should be fine. Right, so that is all the kind of styling we need to do for this text object. Now I'm just going to quickly test and see if this is looking alright. So one thing I'm going to do is just move around and see if it's, yeah, alright, I don't know what that was. Yeah, so it's looking alright, and if I go over something red, you can see the shadow is kind of making sure that it's not totally invisible. If I hit maximize on play, then I'm going to hit pause to pause the game, and hit pause again to unpause it, and resume it, and that's going to maximize the screen for me. And I can see that the 60 is kind of in a nice place and a nice size for what we want. So I'm going to take that off and stop the game. So the next thing we want to do is we want this, we want the countdown label to actually update whenever the timer goes down by an integer number. So when it's 10, 9, 8, 7, but we don't want to see on there like 8.774, so on, so on. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into, what's this? No, something's changed here for some reason, but should be fine, I guess. One sec. Okay, right, I must have accidentally moved this slider, so let me just bring that back to a nice size. Yeah, that's fine. And where were we? Yeah, so I'm gonna go into the game manager script and start making it so that we can update this label. So the first thing I want to do is I'm gonna need a variable to store this text label, and to do that I need to create a variable with a type of text. However, the type of text isn't automatically there. One thing we need to do is import its namespace, and so a namespace is kind of like a package that Unity has, and by default we've got systems.collection, .collection generic, and Unity engine. But what we also need to type right at the top using Unity engine, and then I'm going to say dot UI semicolon, and that should let us come in here just below countdown number and type public, because I want to edit this in the inspector. Public text, just like that, just text with a capital T, and I'm gonna call this the countdown label, or LBL is fine. Right, so we've got the text variable defined, so now we need to do something with this. So what we're going to do is every time we update the timer, the countdown number, what we're also going to do is change the text value of the label. So to do that, we're going to call countdown label, and we don't want the label itself, we want the text component on it. So countdown label.text, And now we could just set this equal to countdown number, but what's gonna happen here is we're gonna see the massive kind of long number with loads of decimal points. And also, even before that, this is a float, not a string. The text object is a string. So to get rid of that error, all we've got to do is type dot to string. But now we still have that problem, as I said, and I think it's best illustrated if I show you this. So I'm going to save that, head back in here, let it reload, and when it finishes, what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna play the game, run it, so that I can show you how having it as a float and converting it directly to the string is not kind of effective. So if I run this, you should see we get oh right, sorry, got an error here. Null reference exception, object reference not set to instance of a object, and that's an error we've got because we forgot to set this text attribute to the variable in Game Manager. You can see countdown label is still none text. So I'm just going to drag, before that actually, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to rename this text object to countdown LBL, just so we know what's what. Then I'm going to come here and drag that onto the variable. I'm going to save and run. So as I said, when you're writing scripts like this, errors do happen. Okay, so here's what I was talking about. As we have it as a float, we've got a bunch of long numbers after, and that's not what we want. What we want to see is we want to see just the integer value, so the whole number. And to do that, what we've got to do is we've got to convert this number. So what I'm going to do is going to get rid of this first of all, because that's not what we want to do. And I'm going to say mathf round to int, and that's going to round our number to an integer. And an integer is just a whole number. So mathf, that's the math function that's the math type in C#, and I'm going to call round to int. That's a function, so it needs to take in a parameter, and that parameter is the float value countdown number, just like that. And remember, to set it to the value of text, we need it to be a string. I'm just going to call dot to string and put in the parentheses. So let's give that a try, and it should be working. Just let it buffer through. Right, so if I run this here, you should see it'll count down in whole numbers now rather than a float, and there you go. It's counting down the way we want it to, not kind of spamming that text item with loads of decimal points. Right, so the next thing that we want to do here is we want we want to do the kind of end sequence. So what happens when we get to 0? So we've put that here. Spin the world when the timer runs out. Now this is kind of misleading because if you think about it, it's going to be pretty hard to spin every object in the world, and there's a way easier way we can do this. And remember when I said that what we're seeing through the camera, right? So the camera is providing our kind of eyes into this world. So an easier way to give the illusion of us spinning the world is we just spin the camera. So let's head back into this code, and what we're going to do is we're going to need a few more variables so that we can implement this spinning thing. First of all, so first of all we are going to need let's go with a float for the degrees we want to rotate by per second. So that's going to be that's just going to be, as it says, how many degrees we're going to rotate by, and that's just a starting value, I think, because we're going to increase the amount it spins by every few frames. So we are gonna call that one public float degrees per second, and I'm gonna set this equal to a starting value of something like 300. Then we're gonna need a game object to store the camera. So I'm gonna say public game object, and it's gonna be the camera, say to rotate. Next we're gonna need, and I think this should be a last variable for this, we're gonna need another boolean, and that's to start a coroutine. So a coroutine in Unity is kind of like a side task or something that enables us to use time. So what this is going to let us do is it's going to let us wait for a certain amount of seconds before doing something. And so what I'm planning on using this for is it's going to wait for a certain amount of seconds before restarting the entire game. So I'm just going to have a boolean to trigger this. So it can be private actually. Yeah, let's go with private. Private bool start coro for spinner. Just go with that, and by default it should be set to true, because if it's true that means that we're allowing it to be started, and then we can stop it. We can, so that because we're working in the update function, right? When we're gonna implement the spin, we want it to, as soon as it reaches 0, we want it to start counting down, say something like 8 seconds or something. And once that 8 seconds is done, we want it to restart the game. But while that 8 seconds is going, we still want our kind of game to be spinning. So what we're going to do is we're going to check if this boolean start coro for spinner is true, and if it is, we're going to start the coroutine, then immediately lock it by setting that boolean to false. So then that will mean we can keep on going spinning the camera, even though we are counting down to the end of the game. So just need to put a semicolon on there, and that means we should be able to get started writing the spinning part. So what I'm gonna do, we've already got we've already got that stuff, checking that if can spin is equal to true, we're gonna stop it from spinning. Now what I'm gonna do though is I need to start the coroutine first of all, but only if that lock is set to true, so unlocked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an if statement again, but this time I'm just going to do it in one line because we only need one thing to go in the if statement. So I'm going to start it off as usual. If start coro for spinner is equal to true, we're going to do this. So conventionally you'd write an if statement like that, right? But it'll still work if we just have the curly braces here and we put what we like in between them. And to do that, I'm going to call the function start coroutine, and this is where we need to make a coroutine. So to make a coroutine, what we need to type is enumerator, and that's gonna it's acting like void does to start a function. What we're gonna do is we are gonna call this one something like finish spin or something like that, or spin to end of game. You can call this whatever you like, again, it doesn't really matter. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this kind of setting can spin equal to false and all that into that function. I think that'll be a bit, into that enumerator. I think that'll be a bit better. So I'm going to just set that up, just like you would with a function. And in here, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to wait for 8 seconds, right? This is the purpose of the enumerator. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, to do this, I'm going to say yield return new wait for seconds. And what that's going to do is basically going to wait, when it gets here, it's gonna stop until 8 seconds passes, and then it's gonna do whatever comes below it, while still doing whatever's here, where we called it. So I'm gonna pass in 8, because I think that should be a decent number. Or maybe, let's go with something like, nah, 8 is fine, yeah. Now what I need to do is I need to set can spin equal to false, and when I do that, it's gonna stop all of this. It's gonna stop the spinning, which is why I wanted to move can spin here rather than keep it there, because otherwise it's gonna stop after it spins one rotation. So after I set can spin equal to false, I want the label that says the time to say that it's looped. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to call countdown label, and I'm going to set its text equal to something like looped. You can say whatever you like here though. That's up to you. Then I'm going to wait for another 2 seconds, say. So I'm going to do yield return new wait for second. No, wait for seconds, and I'm just going to say 2 seconds for now. And now we want to restart the game, and to do that we need another namespace, and this namespace is called scene management or some I think scene management or scene manager. So let's just type in using Unity engine scene management. And what this is going to allow us to do, it's going to allow us to restart the level, just like directly reloading the level. It'll actually, in essence, it allows us to load in any level based on its build index, but for now we're going to just load in our one using scene manager .load scene. So this is going to load a scene. Now it wants here, if you have a look, it wants the scene's index, right? And rather than providing a direct index, because that's not going to be very productive if we have more than one level, we are going to call again scene manager, and this time we're going to say get active scene, and so the active scene is the one we're in now, and then we're going to call on that the build index value, and so that should just load the scene that we're in. And because it's loading it, it's basically saying it's doing the same as if we restarted the level. And I think that's all we need for the coroutine. So back up here in the update function where we have start coroutine, I'm just going to say spin to EO game, and remember to add on the parentheses there. So that's now we need to actually work on literally spinning the game. So what I'm going to do is first I need to lock this, right? I need to lock the coroutine, so I need to say start coro for spinner equals false. Now what I kind of want to do is, I'll just let that run there so I can show you in about 30 seconds. What I want to do is I want to give the effect of the timer kind of going haywire as it's looping, so like kind of everything going haywire as it's looping. So I should probably stay here, but what I want to do is I want to get some random numbers every kind of rotation, and I want to send it straight into that label until we're at the end and it says we need to loop. So if I just wait for this last kind of like 10 seconds, I want to just show you what I mean here, because I don't want it to stay on 0 as soon as the timer ends, right? Because that won't kind of look the nicest. So you see here, once it hits 0, the timer's just going with random numbers. And then once it finishes that 8 seconds or so of looping, it's going to say looped. Right, so what we need to do is we need to set, we need a random number first of all, right? And that random number needs to be a float, and then we'll do the same thing as before by it doesn't have to be a float, or we can use an integer, right? Yeah, I think an integer will be fine. So let's set a new variable, but this time it's something called a local variable. That's because we're not setting it outside like we did here, just in the class. We're setting this within the update function. so it can only be accessed here. And I'm gonna call int num, let's just say random num, random underscore num. Yeah, that works. And I'm gonna set that equal to random dot range. No, random dot range is fine. Then I'm gonna just say between 1 and 1,000. 1,000. Yeah, I think that looks fine. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the countdown label text to num, not num, random num dot toString, and that should be fine, I think. Yeah, that should be fine. I think before we move on, I just want to test this and see if this is fine. I'm just not sure if it had to be a float to work, because I can't remember doing an int or a float, but an int should work. Let's have a look. Also, one thing I need to do is, I did say we're making all the assets ourselves, but I think one asset that we are going to use is a font, because I feel like a font is just something it's going to be a lot easier for us to just download a font. So I'll show you how to do that probably in like the next in one of the next few videos. We'll go through it. Right, so let's run this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of cheat here by going into this and wait, it's only well, this is fine. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now it should go haywire, and yes, it's doing that. So that looks fine. Yeah, that's working, I think. Let's just see if the coroutine, yeah, and the coroutine tells us that it's looped, and it started the game again. So that's perfect, I think. The next thing we want to do is actually spin the level, and so to do that we're going to need, I think, 2 more local variables. I'm gonna say like the the rotation amount, and the current rotation, and that's going to be the current rotation of the camera, so we can actually access that and change it. So to do that, I'm going to create a float, and I'm going to say rotation amount. And what I'm going to do is, I think, what the calculation I should do here is probably going to be the degrees per second, and I'm going to multiply this by the time we have, just to kind of make this the right kind of rotation amount that we need. Otherwise it's just going to be like a raw value, and I don't want to rotate just by 300. So time dot delta time, and then I'm going to need another float, and I'm going to call this current rotation, and I'm going to set this to the, what did I name the camera? Camera to rotate. So camera to rotate dot transform, and last time we used the dot transform was in the camera follow script, right? And we accessed something on it called the position. But this time what we want to access is its rotation, but we want to access its local rotation, which is kind of a variant of its rotation, and this is what's going to allow us to actually see how this thing is rotated along any of the axes. And what I want to do is .Euler angles .z, and that's going to get us the current rotation on the z-axis. And the z-axis rotation is what we're seeing, because if I just get up a sketch and say I just draw out some axes, just roughly like that, we can remember that this is the y, the z, and the x, and what we're seeing is the x and the y, but the z-axis is still there. If we rotate along the y-axis, what's actually happening is we are rotating that way, kind of. If we rotate along the x-axis, we are rotating that way, and these are not the rotations we want to see, because it's not going to spin like in this kind of direction. And so to do that, what we want to do is we want rotation around the z-axis, because that's going to let us rotate like that. So set back into the code and finish that off with a semicolon. Now what I want to do, now I've got these two floats, I've got the rotation amount and the current rotation. I want to rotate the object, and so to do that I'm going to set the camera's local rotation to a new quaternion, and a quaternion refers to a new rotation. It's like how we'd say a vector 3 for transform and position. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use camera to rotate dot transform dot local rotation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that equal to quaternion. I keep messing that up. Quaternion. There we go. And I'm going to call the dot Euler function on that, and in here we're going to have a new vector 3, because remember I said we want to rotate around the z-axis, so we want to keep the x and y the same. So we're going to say new vector 3, and then for the x I'm going to supply 0, for the y I'm going to supply 0, and for the z, now I want to use these two variables, current rotation and rotation amount, and I'm going to do the current rotation minus the rotation amount, and I think that should provide a nice kind of spinning effect. Now one more line I just want to add here, I think, is I said what we'll do is we'll make it spin faster and faster as it goes through, and to do that I can see that the rotation amount is influenced by degrees per second, so what I'm going to do is every frame I'm going to increase that by around 10. So that should be fine. I'm just going to go in and comment. Feel free to skip this if you understand the stuff, but just so people understand. Here what we're doing is the timer. We are subtracting time between now and last frame from our counter variable. Here what we are doing is setting the label, rounding our number to an integer and converting it to a string. Here what we're doing is start the coroutine, and then on next line we are locking it. Here we are creating the haywire counter effect. To do this we are getting a random number and assigning it to the text attribute of the label, I should say component. And finally over here we are actually performing the rotation. Oh yeah, we've also got the coroutine, so I'm going to say wait for 8 seconds, and then here I'm going to stop the rotation happening in the update function, and then over here I'm just going to say reloading the scene. Right, so that should be it for the script. I'm just gonna go and straight ahead and run this. Let it reload everything. I think in this, let's do all this kind of fun stuff later. For now, let's just have it as it is, and we'll sort that out later because it's not essential, I don't think. It's more of like the polish, so we'll leave it to the end, but we need to remember to do that. So let's just check this is working. We've got 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now it should go haywire and spin up. Oh, right, something. Oh, right. So we forgot unassigned reference exception. We've forgotten to assign the camera. I keep forgetting to do that. So over here, I'm just going to go ahead and drop the main camera into camera to rotate. Now when we run it, it should work. So let's have a look. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. And there you go, it's spinning the world. You can see here that everything's spinning around us. It's getting faster and faster, and eventually it's gonna loop and reset the level entirely. Right, so one final thing I think is I'm just gonna change this max number back to 60 because we're done with working with the timer for now. Let me just check the notes, not that. Whatever the notes. Right, sorry. Countdown timer is done. Display timer is done, and spin the world when the timer runs out is all done. So I'm just gonna select these three, format, and I shall go into font and strike them through, just so we know they're done. Right, I think what we should add onto here is we should add one more thing, and that's to download. Not strike through though. Haven't done that. Keep it up. Download the font or something like that, so that we know that we need to do that in some point in the future. Right, so nearing on 40 minutes here. I think I'm gonna end the video here. We've covered all the stuff we should for the basic timer. Yeah, that's it. So if you have any queries, feedback, or you're stuck on anything, remember you can always leave it in the comments section and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. In the next video, I think what we'll do is we'll create the script for interactability, and that is, say we've got something here. You see a little tooltip. I think what I've done here is I've messed up the constraints because the tooltip should be right next to us, where the tooltip is telling us press E to interact. So I'm just going to press E, and there you see it opens up a little dialog box, not dialog box, like a console for us, because we interacted with it. And also I think it's not going to look as good without this font, so before we do that we are going to get the font sorted. I feel like that's kind of one thing I really want to do before we move any further. So that's what we're doing in the next video, but for now, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.